Hello and welcome back to Beasts and Beyond. I am your host, Asherz. And this week I'm joined by our co-host, Katie. Katie, how are you?
Hey there, I'm doing good. It's good to talk to everybody today.
I'm so excited. I can't wait to see what you bring to the table. I have been excited about this since day one, and with this being your introductory episode, not to put any pressure on you, but I have high
Oh my
hopes.
god, the pressure.
It's
Well,
not good. You're
I'm
fired. I'm just kidding.
Oh dear. Well, that's too bad because I'm going to go ahead and bring you some Irish Celtic folklore. I wanted to talk with you today about the Banshee, which is one of the most prominent and well-known types of fae
Yeah.
in Celtic folklore,
Mhm.
mainly Scottish and Irish, but some Welsh. We'll get into it. All right, what do you
Yeah.
think?
So I'm excited to talk about it. I have some really interesting ties that I kind of want to draw together that I don't think enough people kind of touch on as far as just exactly how widespread this story is. Before we get into it, I'm gonna ask you, what's your history with the Banshee? Do you have any special connections to it, or any type of special interest in it? Maybe you've seen one or heard one, rather.
So I have not personally seen or heard a banshee. However, um, I've seen some posts on Reddit about some people who have had potential banshee encounters. And one of the interesting things about me that I'm sure people will hear about as time goes on is I'm a big Renaissance reenactor. I've been doing Renaissance fairs and Celtic fairs in California since I was 8 years old. And I'm not going to tell you my age now, but that's quite a long time. uh, my very first like 2 or 3 years as a Renaissance Fair participant, we did a show based on Irish folklore and fae. And one of my best friends dressed up and did a whole poem and presentation on the banshee, and she could wail like a banshee. It was the scariest thing, and I had nightmares about it for years.
Oh, that's awesome though. Good for her.
But right, she should have been on television. I feel she was amazing at it.
I don't even have the
But
confidence to like try and like, you know what I mean? Like, I tried to scream like as an adult, you know what I mean? Like full on, horror movie scream.
mhm.
And like it just won't come out of me. You know what like I just can't. I've tried. Like I've been out in the middle of the woods and I'm like, okay, let me do it. As a kid, I've done it, right? I just
Sure.
full on scream. And like as an adult, I'm like, I just can't. So like I wouldn't even I don't know if it's just I just lack that confidence. I don't know if I'm just incapable.
It's I think it's something you have to build to. When I was in high school, I was part of a independent film project that was being done at my school, and I was cast as the lead, and it was on psychosis. And so they had me running through the halls of my high school
Screaming.
screaming bloody murder. And at the time, I could not produce a horror scream
Yeah.
at all. Today, tell me to horror scream, I'll horror scream and it will hurt your eardrums and I don't care. But before, I was so concerned about what other people thought of me. And now
Hmm.
I just don't care.
Yeah, I like I said, I wonder. I mean, I think that it is something that is definitely a skill set that is goes underappreciated because I probably people listening to the show, you guys probably haven't thought about screaming for probably since you were a kid. You probably haven't thought about sitting there and just absolutely letting it out at the top of your lungs and try it sometime.
Go
Report
out,
back to me.
go find yourself a nice, quiet, secluded place where nobody else can hear you and disrupt the quiet and scream as loud and as long as you can. I guarantee it is so therapeutic.
I
You
want to
may
do it
need
so
some
bad.
tea afterwards, but
Yeah, I want to. I just like I said, I get there and I'm like, I can't. It just doesn't. I don't know. I'll keep trying and we'll see. Anyway, so good on your friend for having a great banshee scream.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So you've been a fan, or sort of a fan, I guess.
Kind of a fan.
You
I in all honesty, I would never want to actually encounter a banshee
Sure.
because of what they mean. And it's the idea of having the warning that someone I love, or even myself, would be leaving this earth
Mhm.
is too much for me to think about. So to give our listeners an idea, if you haven't heard of a banshee before, it's a supernatural being that is known for its mournful keening or wailing or lamentation at night. And it's believed that the banshee foretold the death of a family member or the person who heard the spirit. Essentially, if you can hear the screams of the banshee, it's likely that someone in your family or you yourself will be the person to pass.
Mhm.
And it could be a good thing in which you have the time to get your affairs in order and say goodbye to your loved ones. But it could also be horrible because it could come on suddenly and you don't know. And it's really interesting to dive into. I'd love to take a moment and just really go through that. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. I just kind of want to tell you guys the banshee is more um heard and not seen.
Yes.
Um in most cases. However, there are instances of people that have seen it. And the descriptions do vary. But the most common description and the earliest description of this lovely lady is just a redheaded woman dressed in white. So very nondescript, nothing very obvious. One trait that she does seem to have consistently over and over again, because sometimes she's a gray-haired woman, like an old hag, even at times. But one thing that does seem to be across the board is that whatever the case, whatever the color, just very, very, very long hair.
Yeah. So it's usually very long hair or well, and frighteningly red eyes or puffy eyes because
Hmm.
she's been crying and wailing all of her days. And it's interesting because you can have a pale woman, you can have an old woman, you could have a beautiful young woman. Um, her hair could be dark as a raven or long and golden or red as crimson. It's so interesting that there's different there are so many different iterations of what a banshee could be that no one actually knows what the prime look of a banshee would be.
Right.
But it's always characterized by the same thing: wailing and lamentation.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And that is the top characteristic. But these things go back. Go ahead and just give us a little history of the banshee.
So the banshee is there's accounts as early as the 8th century. Um, Mainly, banshees were known to be roaming battlefields during large wars. And some soldiers have said that, they see the banshee and they know they're going to die, or, they see the banshee after the battle is over, and it gives them the idea of who exactly in on the battlefield is going to die from their wounds. It's important to remember that banshees actually can't cause death. They're only a premonition of death to come.
Yeah.
Uh, they're not an executioner.
Right.
Now, there are some accounts that say that a banshee could be a spirit that had a violent death and may have had a violent death at the hand of a family member, and so they want revenge upon the family member that did said violent death. Um, And in those accounts, they say that that's when the banshee can take life into their own hands, but I'm not sure if that would be prominent. Um,
Interesting. Okay.
right? I don't know. To me, the idea of a banshee causing a death sounds so outside the norm
Hmm.
that it just doesn't it doesn't sit right with me.
Yeah. So one legend, one kind of urban legend that goes around when it comes to the banshee is like, which would suggest that she hurts people ever is, if you find a stray comb or a brush on the ground, you're not supposed to pick it up because it could belong to a banshee. Because again, she's got this great long hair that she's seen brushing sometimes.
Yes.
And you're not supposed to pick it up because she will come after you. Now, what she does when she comes after you seems to remain a mystery. Because I think that people are smart enough to not even chance it. Maybe she just kindly asks for it back. Um, but the idea is that that's not necessarily going to be the case. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's oh gosh, it's so interesting. And then on top of the banshee herself, a lot of local people, especially in Derry, Ireland, if you look for the Derry Journal has a whole multitude of an article on the banshee itself, and I actually have a story about the banshee that comes from the Derry Journal that I wanted to relay. But many locals also believed that the appearance of crows, the howling of a dog, or the screeching of a cat outside a sick person's home could foretell the coming of the banshee. So now you've
Interesting.
got multiple iterations of warning and foretelling that say, hey, the banshee's on her way, this person's going to die. And there's a story that I really am interested in. It's called the Long Tower, and it dates back to the late 1940s. One winter, an elderly resident of the street suddenly became ill and was confined to his bed. And a few days later, some black crows came down in front of his house and started eating bread that had been thrown out. And the neighbors went and chased all of the birds away because they thought, oh, that means the banshee's coming. Well,
Hmm.
later that night, the old man's health deteriorated further. And after that, one of the young family members heard knocking on the door and nobody else heard it. And so she asks, hey, do you guys hear that knocking? And an old woman who was sitting opposite her goes, oh my gosh, go answer it. He'll have no rest unless you answer the door.
Hmm.
And so she goes and she opens it, and all of a sudden she screams and collapses. And everybody inside rushes to her. They're like, what's going on? Are you okay? And they calm and they comfort her. And she goes, when I open the door, I look across the yard and I could see an old hag like woman with long white hair and a long white dress. She appeared to be crying and moaning and wringing her hands. She began to come towards the door, and I screamed, and she just seemed to vanish. Well, the old man died that night.
Oh no.
And
Okay.
so they're led to believe that the banshee had visited them.
Oh.
So there's another story around the same time that was from a resident in Bogside, Ireland. And it involved her grandfather and his son. The grandfather had been suffering painfully from what he thought was a toothache for a few days. And he visits a dentist, and he mentions that he had seen a large white sheet hanging from one of their neighbors' upstairs windows. And he tells this to his wife as well. And his wife, knowing that particular neighbor pretty well, was surprised to hear that she was apparently drying her washing in the front street. The next day, her son approaches her somewhat agitated and recounts this strange experience that he had heard a mournful wail coming from the end of the street. And he says, I noticed what appeared to be a child sitting crying under a window. And he walks down the street, and there's this old woman, and she's moaning. He tries to put his hand out to her, but she shies away and runs off.
Interesting.
And he was so convinced that he had seen a banshee that he urged his mom to go to a doctor and have his father go to the doctor because of his toothache. Well, a few nights later, his dad died. So is that another occurrence of the banshee? Like,
Sure. Yeah,
I could see
absolutely.
that being a banshee.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it fits all descriptors. I'm curious, especially like with in the first story, there's a warning before the banshee, and then the banshee's warning, and then, well, death. I mean, can they prevent these deaths from happening potentially? Is there a way to stop it once you've encountered one of these? I mean, it sounds like in the second scenario here, we've got a gentleman who clearly has a toothache. He dies from it, which very much can kill you. Um, you know, could he have prevented that had he been proactive about his health? What do you think about that?
I mean, I definitely think that things that are within your control, like going to the dentist and having your tooth looked at and seeing what exactly is going wrong, that would be a good way to prevent the occurrence of a banshee, especially if you have an omen beforehand.
Right.
But some things you can't control. If you
Yeah.
have, if you haven't been diagnosed with terminal stage 4 cancer that's inoperable and incurable and is going to take you regardless of whether or not you want it to, and you start seeing those omens, but you get diagnosed, what are you going to do? You might be able to prolong you might be able to prolong your life a little bit and delay the effects from taking you, with chemo and radiation, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to die. All of us are going to die at some point,
Right.
but you just have to make good choices and stay on top of your health and make sure that you're going to those important appointments, even if you don't necessarily want to. I know I don't want to go to the dentist myself, but I go every 6 months like I'm supposed to.
Sure. Yeah.
um, but I don't personally think that you can stop the banshee from coming. When it's your time, it's your time.
Interesting. So I wonder why. I mean, what would be her motive? I mean, well, I guess there was the example of she does it because it is personal to her.
Mm-hmm.
And what? But what? I mean, it kind of seems. I mean, it seems evil to let someone know. I mean, if I wouldn't want the power to know that a loved one's going to die.
Same.
Like,
I would not either.
no, like I don't. As a matter of fact, I've recently been in contact with a woman who has dreams. And when she'll dream of a couple of times in her life, she's dreamt of people dying, and then they die. And she's been able to coordinate specific details that um couldn't have known, she couldn't have possibly known. And it's horrible. It's she feels cursed. you know so I mean, what is the banshee out there just spreading this misery just because, or because she feels like it's her right to do so? I mean, I guess that's the part. I mean, I would like to ask her. you know like, why do you do that? Why do you think she does it?
I mean, I think I a lot of people say that she's a spirit, that she's a spirit of someone who passed violently, or a spirit of a family member who wants to warn other family members that she is, that she's coming to take someone's life,
Hmm.
or to escort them, essentially, like a Grim Reaper. But
Yeah, yeah.
I think that the Banshee is Fae. I think that she's part of the Fae realm, that she's got this hidden knowledge of who's going to pass. And I think that it's actually a good thing if you do see a banshee, because, or well, not necessarily if you see her, but if you hear her, because it gives you enough time to say goodbye and settle your affairs, or settle your loved ones' affairs, and make sure that things are taken care of, so that when it's time to mourn, you can mourn freely and you don't have to worry about everything else that goes into it.
Hmm. I think that that is that instead of spreading misery, she's attempting to alleviate misery. I think that that could be. I think that's a potential. One of the legends that go along with it. It's a lot like when people talk about Native American lore, okay, and they'll throw out a term. Let's just say a really popular one, the Wendigo, right? They're like, oh, the Wendigo. This is what a Wendigo is. This is how a Wendigo operates. Well, the thing about it is that there is no one right way that a Wendigo operates, because you have multiple tribes that have their own subcultures and how they view these things. The Banshee also very much has that. So there's no like one right answer as to the set rules. This is a Banshee, much like Bigfoot, right? You got all these Bigfoot with different colors. Just because, I saw a brown one and you saw a red one, it doesn't mean that both of us didn't see a Bigfoot. Not that I've never seen one, but you know, anyway. One story, one version of events that I've heard is that the Banshee only it is specific to very particular surnames when it comes to sightings. So, like, some family members, some lineages believe that they have their own personal banshee within their family.
And
Um,
that's where the banshee could be a spirit of a loved one that had
right.
passed, or a family member that had passed. That makes total sense.
Yeah. And, that is just something that kind of goes along with it. Now, in some of the research, these surnames, people are like, well, that covers almost every single Irish person. For, for example, anybody whose surname begins with an O, anybody whose surname begins with Mick or Mac. So
That also brings in your Scottish surnames as well.
exactly. And I mean, that covers, again, a huge ground of who qualifies to have
That's
their own personal banshee.
yeah, that's a
Um,
lot.
right. And so, is there something to that? Is it that they were trying to kind of track where banshees come from? And that's the only thing that was kind of the common denominator here. I'm not sure. I do find that very interesting, though. As an Italian, you can keep your banshees.
Well, as a Irish Italian woman, I'm I'm pretty sure that I believe in the Irish folklore, but also I've got the skepticism there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, well, I did want to kind of talk about that. Like I said, I wanted to share some examples. Of course, you've got more banshee stories, right? You've got more encounters to go over.
I have another one that is based on a family in North Carolina.
Okay, yeah.
This was written by Heather Andelina,
Mhm.
who tells her own personal family tale. And this is from a website that I found that has, top 10 banshee stories. You are welcome to look this up yourself, readers, listeners.
They might read too. You don't know them. I'm just kidding.
Maybe. I don't know. I'm very surprised I know how to read.
I feel that.
So she says, uh, banshees are very protective of their respective families, so much so that they've been known to follow Irish families as they immigrated to other countries. For instance, there's a few American folk tales about banshees. Her story is I'm not quite sure when she wrote this, but she says about 3 years ago, a shop called Laughing Book Spellcrafting and Ancestral Arts opened in Huntersville, North Carolina, and I stopped in one day to check it out. Upon entering the store, I immediately felt a watchful presence. I thought to myself, is this place haunted? As if reading my mind, the proprietress of Laughing Laughing Brook, Gabriella Tebbins, Gabby from here on out, asked me if I was okay. Being relatively forthright, I asked her if the place was haunted. She laughed and said no, but she did have a banshee. Gabby's of Irish and Italian descent,
Mm-hmm.
and Heather also has Irish descent as well. And that may have been why her banshee made its presence known.
Mm-hmm.
Intrigued, she wanted to know more about Gabby's banshee, so they decided to meet over lunch. I'll continue telling this in Heather's first person point of view.
Sure.
A few weeks later, I met Gabby and her daughter, Nave Cromer, for lunch to learn more about their banshee. Gabby, like me, felt a presence that seemed to follow her around. At first, she thought it was the spirit of her sister who passed away while Gabby was in college, but she's felt her sister's presence before and it didn't feel quite the same. Shortly before opening the shop, Gabby was asked to speak at the Piedmont Pagan Pride Conference in Charlotte. While sitting at a discussion panel, she felt the unmistakable presence around her, and in a soft, low whisper, she heard the word banshee in her ear. That's when Gabby knew that the presence was a banshee. The banshee has been a fixture at Laughing Brook ever since its opening, and she comes and goes like the wind. Most often, the banshee is felt, but a few people have seen Gabby's banshee, like Jessica Witchy, a friend of Gabby's.
Wow.
How crazy is that?
Interesting. So, I mean, it's like they have a local banshee.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, and not just a banshee that'll come once and then leave, but a banshee
Right.
that sticks around.
And just hangs out.
I don't
That's very
I don't know how I
interesting.
would feel about that.
Well, I I feel like I have some type of answer. Not exactly an answer, but and researching this thing and just kind of as soon as I see the physical description of the banshee, the first thing that comes to mind to me is a very American urban legend, the Lady in White.
Yes. Yes, the
And
lady in white.
this or the woman in white, or
Mm-hmm.
some people call it the white lady, which sounds a little like a Karen,
A little
um,
bit.
which is not quite the same thing. Um, you know, so the Lady in White story, I mean, is universal. Everybody's got this. Almost even to the point to where, I mean, you can almost find a Lady in White tale in every county in the United States.
Oh yeah.
Um,
I
there
can tell
are
you I could tell you about one that we have in the Bay, and
sure,
it's crazy. We've got so there's a canyon in the South Bay of the Bay Area, California, Northern California. Um and there's a ghost tale that I've heard since I was young about Niles Canyon and the woman in white. And they say there's this canyon is particularly windy, and there's a spot where it winds over a bridge.
okay,
And there are numerous people who have said that they see the lady in white and then their cars crash.
yep,
It
that
is
sounds.
so scary. I remember when I was little, I was like, I don't want to drive in Niles Canyon at night.
Have you ever seen anything down there?
No, I've never seen anything down there. Usually by the time if we were driving anywhere and we were driving to Niles Canyon, it would be during the day or I would be asleep.
Yeah, I don't
I
blame you
was
at
a
all.
child.
Right. You're like, no, I don't want to see that woman. No, thank you. I don't care if she's wearing white. She's not pure. No, that, I mean, and that is pretty much, I mean, that story right there is almost exactly what they all are. You'll be driving down a creepy road or an old bridge. A bridge is popular. Crybaby bridges have
Yep.
them. That's almost a focal point of the Crybaby Bridge. A woman in white drowned her baby, so now you heard the baby cry. You turn the car off
Yeah.
and you can't turn it back on. Places where people wreck a lot, which is probably exactly what you're describing. It sounds like a windy road. It's because of the mysterious lady in white. Cemeteries have them. Oh, I was at the cemetery. There was a woman all in white with very long hair. they're everywhere. I mean, these stories are completely universal. And I mean, urban legends typically in this type, in my job, right, are usually not real, I guess, for lack of a better term. However, when you start digging into them, sometimes you will find stories that do seem to have some type of legitimacy to them. And whether or not there's a reasonable explanation or whatever the case is, there might be something. So you're telling me though that every single county in this country has this story, and we're just supposed to go, yeah, it's just a scary story we tell people.
Yeah, no, I agree. There's got to be more to it. I thoroughly agree that there's something at play here.
Right.
And it's not just some superstition that you take with a grain of salt.
Yeah. And, if we go even further south, one that's popular because they made a horror movie about it is, well, guess what? La Llorona.
Yes.
I mean, that is all typical banshee behavior. And again, it follows very much the Lady in White story. She drowned her kids, and now you can see her. She's crying all the time. I mean, it's the same thing. It's just called something else. Um, Now, whether or not, again, these stories are valid, I can't say. I've never
Yep,
seen La
neither can
Llorona,
I.
never saw Lady in White, never heard of Banshee. Some theories put out there that people will say about like the Banshee's cry is like, well, it could be a fox. And if you have ever heard a fox cry, well, it is very intimidating if you don't know what it is.
Exactly.
Um,
Have you ever heard a
Cougars.
fox cry?
I've not heard a fox cry in person. Uh,
I it is it's concerning.
you're like, are you okay?
Yeah, like they sound like they're dying.
Yeah, well, they do, right? Yeah. So I've played, I've listened to it just because, again, it is. I mean, part of my job, listen to all these weird noises in the woods. That's one of them. That's a really popular one that people will hear, and yeah, you're right. It's scary if you don't know what you're listening for. It's horrifying, and we just mentioned foxes mostly because they have them over in Ireland and that area. That's something that's native to there, and just going based off of where it comes from. Cougars is another one.
Yep.
Female cougars, when they are trying to let people know that they're ready to do the deed. They very
When
much
it's
let you
mating
know
time.
when it's
Yeah.
mating time. But they will let you know, and it is scary sounding. Anybody that's not a male cougar should stay away.
Yeah, probably a good idea.
Is, what she's saying. There's lots of animals that make really concerning noises that you don't really think about. And one of the episodes we kind of talked about it. I've been recording a lot of episodes for the one of the other shows, and we were talking about different noises that animals make that you never really think about. Like an opossum. Have you ever heard any of their noises? Probably not.
I've never heard I've never heard a possum noise.
Yeah, they're strange. One night, some funny story. I'll tell you a funny story. A noise. My mom and my stepdad. He's got this truck that he never drives. It's got 2 flat tires and it sits in the driveway. And we're outside. Me and my mom are outside, and we hear some noise happening in the truck, and we're like, "What is that?" And I can't even try to potentially imitate it, but we were like, what is going on there? Like, obviously the truck's not on, but there's some animal in there making some weird noises. What is happening? So I pull up Google. The first thing I think of is, what does a raccoon sound like? I didn't know. At that point, I had no idea. So I Googled it, and sure enough, it's a baby raccoon. It makes a very particular noise when it's trying to get mom's attention, and that's what it was doing. It's probably because it was scared because we were out there.
And meanwhile,
And
I'm over here like, oh, poor baby.
I know. Yeah. Eventually, we're like, well, what do we do? What if it's stuck in there? Is it stuck? Should we try to get it out? We left it alone. The noise eventually did go away. So maybe mom came and got it. She probably dropped off baby somewhere around the truck area to go, scavenge for some food. But yeah, I mean, there's so many animals that, again, if you don't know, you don't know.
Right.
And I live in a very, I mean, I spend a lot of time in the woods, but I live in a very suburban area. Like, we don't have a bunch of animals out here well, my particular area we do, but usually when you're surrounded by houses, you don't, you know.
See, we have, so I'm in, like I said, I'm in the Bay Area. I'm surrounded by concrete, and we've got some trees and some bushes, and we've got animal life out here. We've got mice, rats, roaches. Um we have raccoons, we have possums, uh we have mountain lions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
The
you
most
do.
interesting thing is, though, there's like a section of road where you can go, and it's actually where my husband's family has this ranch way up in the hills. I've seen elk and deer
Ooh.
and mountain lions. Like, you see a lot of really cool animals when you do get the chance to go out in the wild. It's been a really long time since I've been in a forest or the woods, though.
Yeah, it's interesting. We get a lot of people, which is surprising for the area, like on our next door app, and they're like, "There's coyotes. Be careful. Watch your dogs." And it's like, you should. I
Oh,
mean,
we get coyotes all the time.
right, you should know that there's coyotes already. It's not particularly unusual for the area. But the area that I live at, one of the more interesting things that we have that I have seen, are bobcats. We have
Really?
bobcats, yes, ma'am. And they are always, so I live, like I said, in a suburban little town, nice area, lots of houses, but I live on the edge of it, and I live right next to a nature reserve. So while I can't, I guess I could walk to the nature reserve. I would still I choose to drive there and go into it rather than walk up there. But yeah, I mean, we've got bobcats living in that reserve. And so we will see them kind of venture out, from time to time. We do get foxes. I've seen foxes crossing the street. Deer, we'll get deer in the area. People will hit them. Right next to our Walmart and Target. But yeah, bobcats is one that's interesting, especially because technically for us, bobcats were cryptid for a minute because we declared them extinct in Ohio, until sightings started picking up and we had proof and could take them off of that list, and now they're native here. So anyway, people don't know that live in this area don't know that we have bobcats right outside. So I find that interesting. So of course, if they were outside and they heard a bobcat screaming, they don't know what that sounds like.
I mean, I would be terrified. I have no idea what a bobcat sounds like.
Right. Exact noise. You wouldn't know. And that is just, it's a part of it. I live right on a trail specifically. So like I can walk out my front door and just go get on the trail right there. It's right there. And
That's amazing.
yeah, it is. No, it's really great. And one time, so there's kind of there's like houses somewhat along the trail. I don't know if they moved out. I don't know if they went on vacation. I don't know what happened. One of the houses there, I don't know if it was their smoke detector or maybe their alarm was beeping for like 3 weeks straight.
Oh my God.
So you couldn't even just going outside my front door. It's just beep, beep. And you're like, what the fuck is going
How did it have the
on?
batteries to last that long?
It was like 3 weeks straight. And I was like, what is this?
And
Can that
nobody else on the
stop?
trail thought to call about the beeping?
I guess like I didn't either. So like maybe I don't know. Maybe I should have. Like, what was happening? First when I walked out and I heard the very first time I heard it again, I live in an apartment complex. I figured it was maybe one of the neighbors. Right? They burnt their pizza rolls. I don't know. But it was every time you go outside. And I was walking. I one day I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go on the trail. Let's go see what's going on. And I could hear it, and I'm pretty sure I know which house it was coming from. And I'm like, do I call? Do I do anything? I didn't. Eventually it stopped. So I don't. they were probably like dead in there for like
Oh my god.
I don't know. Like I said, I'm just going to assume that maybe they didn't own the house, right? They were getting ready to sell it, and
Mm-hmm.
somebody tripped the alarm. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Um, pretty terrible. I guess I'm admitting on air that I was a bad citizen, and I'm normally not. I promise. But uh, I was
Meanwhile,
kind of
I'm over here. I don't even live in the area, and I'm like, did anybody call?
did
Is
anybody
everybody
right. I'm
okay?
like, but I think like I don't know, like curiosity got the better of me. I'm like, how long could this go on for? Like, what?
I'm surprised the batteries lasted that long
It was
because if it's
crazy.
incessantly doing that, it shouldn't. They shouldn't last 3 weeks. They must have just installed new batteries in that detector.
All the time. Well, so that's what tells me that they were putting the house on market. And
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I said, maybe somehow it got tripped. I mean, the house wasn't burned down. There's no smoke coming from it. It was fine. But I don't even like. I couldn't even like tell if that was the house or not. It was coming from. So I
I
was
wonder if
like,
it was a carbon monoxide detecting one too, because maybe it was
stop.
detecting
And
carbon
right,
monoxide there.
and maybe they were dead.
Hmm.
Just like not calling anybody. Yeah, no. I think had I felt more confident about where exactly it was coming from, then I definitely would have called and been like, "Hey, something's going on here." But I didn't, because it is on the trail, and so the houses are like like they're far, you can see them, but they're far. So I didn't know. I'm like, I don't know.
What? Wow.
So what does it have to do with the banshee? Well, sometimes banshees manifest in
In smoke
weeping.
detectors.
I had no intention on telling this story before we started, but I just remembered. Why not? No time like the present. But anyway, my whole point of everything that I was saying is that again, you could even live in your area and still not recognize the wildlife and things around you, just because like it's if you don't really dig into it, you don't know. Animals are largely elusive and tend to stay away from us. So, like, yes, we have bobcats here, but like, they're not hanging out with us. They don't want to talk to
Yeah,
us.
they don't use most wild animals don't really want to interact with humans. If they can get away with not doing
Yeah.
it, they won't. If you see a wild animal that is nearby, stay away from it. Don't try to initiate any sort of contact. Just let it go
Yeah.
and call your local animal control because it could possibly kill your pets.
It might.
Like
Or just
make sure they're aware at least.
right, or just yourself at least you should know if you have pets. Like I said, we
Bring
get
them
these
inside.
neighbors all the time. They're like, "Oh, coyotes." And it's like, "Yeah, we got coyotes and hawks and you probably shouldn't just let your chihuahua chill outside for hours on end."
Yeah,
Like,
no, I've got two little Pomeranians and I love them to death and I do not let them stay outside.
no. Like that's
They are my lap dogs. They stay with me.
yeah, no, I mean, you should just be, self-aware. So, are these noises sometimes what is mistaken for a banshee? Why not?
I I think that could be I think that could be the case.
You know.
I do have another experience encounter
Okay.
that was actually posted on Reddit 7 months ago.
Oh, okay.
So
Pretty
this is
recent.
I mean, it was posted 7 months ago, but apparently, according to the original poster, this was a few years ago.
Okay.
She's. They say, me and my mom noticed an increase in strange events in our house, doors opening, unexplained sounds, etc. Until one night, my mom thought I was crying in the hallway, only to find no one was there, despite distinctly hearing female sobbing. Fast forward a month exactly, and I was in the hospital for severe DKA with a new diagnosis of type 1 diabetes. Once I got back home and my health returned to normal, the encounter stopped. We both believed that the crying was a deceased relative, specifically a grandmother. The details aren't important, but we have a reason to associate it with her, who had begun warning us, similar to a banshee. I had mostly forgotten about this until a few months ago when I also thought that I had heard a woman crying softly, but didn't think much of it until my dad had a stroke a few weeks later. Anyway, I was just wondering if anyone had a similar experience to share or any insight to provide this experience. And some people are like, do you think it was a banshee? Don't they scream instead of crying? And the OP was like, well, while yes, they're found crying in pop culture, according to traditional Irish belief, it's simply mourning spirits, often sent to warn people. And another person was like, well, banshees aren't known for door opening or moving things around sort of hauntings. So I'm thinking this is another type of warning spirit. There's just because there is no account that a banshee wasn't opening doors or making strange noises doesn't mean that the banshee could do it.
Well,
Just my two
right.
cents.
I mean, who are you, the Banshee police?
I
Reddit?
know, right?
They do think that though about themselves. Reddit. I love it though. Probably spend more time on it than anywhere else. Anyway, Reddit is a great place for encounters with anything strange. Like if you, I mean, seriously.
Reddit is a great place to watch drama unfold
Oh
without it
yes.
being your own.
Yeah, yes, it really is. Listen, I just went through it. I enjoy it greatly, but no, it really is like, so I mean, you can get on Reddit and type in banshee and you're gonna get
I
I
bet
mean
you that exact
hundreds.
story will pop up.
That story will, and that's like, so like I was saying earlier, I wonder if there's a way to prevent it. It sounds like they prevented it, right, by getting medical intervention.
Well, they perhaps it's from what it sounded like the OP was fine, like perfectly fine. And then they heard the crying, the wailing. And a month later, exactly, they were in the hospital for a diagnosis of type 1 diabetes. So they must
Mhm.
have had some sort of health scare.
So, well, so with so that's actually what almost killed me. That's what I was in the hospital for. And it will kill you. It's very much will. And unless your body is like reacting in a certain way, like you have this finite amount of time where you can potentially prevent it. DKA, it's diabetic ketoacidosis, is what it is. So your blood slowly turns acidic.
Oh my God, that sounds horrifying.
It is. And then, then it starts shutting down your organs basically. I mean, you can't you can't have acidic blood pumping through your veins. It just doesn't work that way. Um, so it's a progressive problem. It takes a minute. And, this person could have been walking around as a type 1 diabetic for like 2 years and not know it. And then within that last month, the DKA starts to set in. The blood starts, like I said, turning acidic, and it's also a slow process. And that's why, like, it is so dangerous because you don't know it until you are so bad off that you are going to die. Like that is very common. So that, I mean, that checks out. So for that last month, they could have already been in DKA and not realized it because it is a slow progressive issue. So that makes sense. So there, it sounds like they're, assuming this story is real, right? We don't know. It's Reddit. But assuming that it does sound like in that case, they were able to prevent it. Not necessarily because they tied together, they're like, oh my God, there's a banshee in the house. Obviously there's something wrong. I have to go to the hospital. But the banshee does show up before death happens. So, I mean, there is a chance. There is a chance. Just like
There's
with,
definitely a chance.
yeah, I mean, the dad with the toothache.
I have another one too from
Oh,
Reddit.
okay, go ahead.
This poster was 2 years ago. She says, I think I saw a banshee who's warning me my boyfriend will pass soon. And this is
From
categorized in cryptids.
2 months or 2 years?
2 years.
Okay.
So the other night, I was sitting on my porch smoking a cigarette, as I usually do late at night. I was home alone. My boyfriend was at work at the time, and I just hear really loud screaming. I look behind me, and I see what looks like a woman just walking down the street, screaming at the top of her lungs, and she looked right at me. My initial thought was maybe it's just some weirdo or someone under the influence of something. But after more thought, I realized the scream didn't really sound human. It sounded like something I've never heard before. After that, I thought maybe it was a skinwalker, but my mother informed me that chances are it was a banshee. For some backstory on why I think maybe she's warning me of my boyfriend's passing is because a couple nights before the potential banshee sighting, me and my mom had very similar dreams. In my dream, my boyfriend had passed and I was trying to figure out how to cope with his passing. In my mom's dream, I was giving birth to a child and kept saying, I need to take care of the baby. I promised their father I would, hinting at the idea that the father was dead. I don't know what I saw, but I'm hoping for some insight on banshees and just help me figure out what I saw. TLDR, I think I saw a banshee after me and my mom having similar dreams about my boyfriend had passed and want some insight.
Wow. Did she update? Did he pass?
Let's see. I don't see an update on her post. Now, mind you, this particular thread has 189 comments, so a lot of people decided to give their opinion and their insight. It looks like it's got 664 upvotes, so yeah.
Interesting. I wonder. I wonder if he's still around.
I do too. I'm not seeing anything. Another lady in the chat talks about her grandmother from Ireland who told her cousins scary bedtime stories about the banshee, about her own experience when she was 13. She says she was running an errand for her mom with her sister Mary. They had to go through a wooded area to get to the next small town. There was a small stream where the kids used to fish and play. They were approaching the stream, and from a little distance, Mary says, what's that, Annie? They both stopped and looked. Beside the stream, with their back to him, was a figure of a woman with long dark hair, and she wore a light-colored dress, and her feet were bare. They were silent, so they could hear soft, gentle weeping. Without waiting another minute, her grandmother said her and Mary turned and ran the other way as fast as they could. When they got home, they told their dad about their adventure, and their mom wasn't very happy that they had returned without completing the errand. Their dad was like, it's probably the banshee. Her mom rolls her eyes and mumbles something under her breath, and the next day, a younger child that the family knew was found face down in the stream in the same place they saw the woman.
Ooh.
Ah!
That's gross. That's a gross one. Yeah. Listen, fuck all that. That's what I have to say.
I know.
No, thank you. I'm cool with Bigfoot and Dogman, and I'm just I have no interest in this banshee woman. Like she can fuck right off.
Well,
go ahead.
Don't be rude to the banshee friend.
You're right. I'm sorry. I will brush her hair.
Be respectful of the fae.
I will brush her hair. I'll bring my own comb even, so I don't even have to cut her. Because I've also heard that so she doesn't just like warn people, and she doesn't have the potential to hurt people. She also can make you go bald.
Like what? I haven't actually heard that.
Yep, that's another one that's passed down through the stories that she can make you go completely bald. And I don't know in what instance. Maybe that's when you pick up her comb, right? And she comes for you.
Maybe
that's what she does. But that is another one. She doesn't always scream either. Sometimes she'll knock at your window, which is again another classic ghost tale, right?
That is classic.
Knocking on my window.
I've had tons of experiences where I've heard knocks at my window when I was a kid in my old house, and I'd look out the window and nobody was there.
Oh, did anybody die?
I don't remember anybody dying, but I do remember having 3 family members who passed away within like 6 months of each other.
Wow. Jeez.
Like all in 6 months.
All those
3 family members.
No, she just used them all at once. Was like,
I know, they were just like dominoes, one at a time.
That's crazy. Wow. Yeah, that's I mean that is another, I mean, again, she doesn't, and like you said, manifesting and murders of crows, as they're called. Cats, different trickster type creatures in those cultures. So it is a very expansive topic because it doesn't have a beginning, a middle, and an end, right? This is you can tie it into so much other folklore that's out there, which I find that so fascinating. When you can just, I mean, it really is a rabbit hole with no brick wall at the end. Locally, I'll tell you, it's fun. Locally, I live next to a big amusement park. It is called Kings Island. Paramount Kings Island. It has the longest wooden roller coaster in the world. Anyway, they have a roller coaster there. It's called the Banshee. It has a scary picture of a scary woman on the sign.
As it would.
Why is it called the Banshee? I guess because it makes you scream like a banshee. I don't know. So, it's something that's also clearly invaded pop culture. What do you think? We'll kind of wrap it up. What are your final thoughts of the Banshee? Do you think that this is a legitimate tale? Do you think that there's something to it? You think it's just folklore? What's your opinion?
I mean, as a Irish Italian woman who happens to have one of the last names of one of the 5 major families
Yeah.
in Ireland that a banshee would follow around, I definitely believe that the banshee is real. That's one of the reasons I wanted to bring it up as a topic of conversation for this show. I certainly believe that there's a possibility of an encounter in my lifetime at some point. I'm open to that happening, even though I don't want that to happen because it means someone in my family is passing away.
Right.
But yeah, I believe they're real for sure. And anyone who doesn't believe, they can come at me.
Oh, you will fight them. Okay.
I will die on this hill.
Okay. All right then. No, I can't say that this is not a thing. I mean, like I said, with so much, with so many alleged encounters with not just saying the Banshee, but just very similar entities to it. I believe that there has to be some truth in there. Yes, absolutely. Some of the sightings are probably mistaken foxes. There probably are reasonable explanations. Some of them are probably just, like the other person said, your local weirdo walking down the street screaming. Those people exist.
Lord knows, I've seen plenty of them. We have woken up in the middle of the night with some random person screaming at the top of their lungs, just unintelligible screams.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily like that. That's not a banshee, but I mean, could the idea itself manifest into what a banshee could be?
It definitely could. Some of them will be you guys after you go screaming in the woods.
Yes. People will think they have heard a banshee at that point.
Right.
If they are nearby.
You know what? Maybe then they have a death in the family that happens. And I suppose it just depends on how much you believe in coincidence to decide whether or not you were the manifestation of the banshee at that time. That's up to you to decide. It happens. But I think that there's so much. I think that this is such an old tale that it's hard to deny that there's definitely something to it. I can't tell you what. I can't tell you what it is. I can't even tell you what I really think about it. I very commonly don't believe that like ghosts and spirits are dead people. So like I don't buy the fact that this is just, an unfortunate end to a woman that once was a human. But that's just because of my general research and not specific to the stories themselves. So I don't know. I think it's really neat. If you or anybody have had a banshee encounter, come tell it on the Experiencer show.
Please do, and let me interview you.
Yeah, come on. Yeah, Katie will be there. We'll talk about it with a complete open mind. I would love to hear it, and especially if you've had a visual. I think that would be really interesting. So. Well, I suppose with that being said, guys, we will go ahead and wrap it up here, and we'll see you back here on the next episode.